It is so important to believe people who say they were sexually assaulted. Because, like I said, 95% truth rate. The research is all over the literature. So believe them and help them.
Folks, today I've got a topic that it's difficult to say it's interesting because it's such an important topic, and some might say that it is difficult to deal with. So if you have a difficult time listening to sexual assault and anything to do with that, please understand that we might get into something that is difficult for you to listen to. But I want to start off real quick to find out from Kevin what Title IX is.
Originally, it was an act by Congress, a federal act, to level the playing field as it related to scholarships because women were getting the short end of the stick as it related to getting scholarships. Football teams, for instance, would have sometimes over 100 scholarships, and women wouldn't be getting equal amounts. But as most laws, how it happens, the law evolved, and it evolved to situations on campus where women's rights were being violated, and sexual assault is included in that it robs a woman of her right to enjoy her education and to have her education.
I'm glad you gave us that explanation because a lot of times I think that we think about that equal opportunity for women, and I think oftentimes people may refer to it as sports and getting into education and getting the scholarships. And Sienna, Marisa, this is a little bit different of a story. So can you tell us what life was like for you before this?
Yes. Life before this I was just a little church girl. I listened to my parents. I was a straight A student. I stayed relatively close to home for college. I went to college just over the river in Kentucky, away from Ohio. So it's like I went to school out of state, but it was barely out of state for a little bit of freedom and still trying to stay close to home. But yeah, life changed. Unfortunately, it's about 10 days, less than 2 weeks after I started my undergraduate career. So it shifted pretty quickly. And I met Kevin not too long after that. So yeah.
Now, you do have a book, and your book is titled "I Am the One in Four." And again, I can say it's much more than a personal story. And if I'm getting anything incorrect, please let me know. Because I think this is, again, more than just a personal story. It's more of a call to action. So I was hoping if you could tell us, what prompted or what decided you to share your story, and what do you hope that the readers take away from it?
Yes. So, like you mentioned, our book is titled I Am the One in Four. And we titled it as such because 1 in 4, so that's 25% of women in the United States and Canada experience sexual assault during their undergraduate career. So, like you said, this is not just my story. I am part of the 1 in 4. And unfortunately, many women are. And so that's why we wrote this story, is because not just did a lot of people not really know about the federal court case and all the real change that occurred on campus because of what happened. A lot of people really don't know how to keep themselves safe in general. And a lot of parents don't even know that this is kind of a thing or a risk on campus. And so that's why we wrote it.
Kevin, I'll give you a chance to talk in a second, though, but I also want to find out from you, Sienna, Marisa, is you use this phrase that thriving after surviving. That you use that, I think we refer to it often. And those are two words that are really different from each other, the thrive and survive. So can you explain to us, what does thriving actually look like after this experience that you had, this trauma? And, if you could tell us too, what helped you move from just that simple surviving to building a meaningful life?
Yes. So there is a lot of power behind thriving instead of living or just existing. It's finding that inner strength to move forward and to harness that energy inside you again after trauma. So thriving after everything, it took a lot of support. That's why Kevin's in my life. It took a lot of support. Personally, in my experience, I could not thrive without support. That is, getting support during undergrad is one of the reasons why I was able to earn a double degree, graduate summa cum laude, earn a degree at the University of Oxford, and continue my education. So much of that is based in community. So much of that is based off of a social strength. And that is very much behind that thriving rather than just like existing or living after surviving. Yeah, it's been a journey, but it's been beautiful to not be alone on that journey.
What's surprising about this is that this happened to you at the school and you remain at the university to finish your education. That has got to be a very, very difficult thing to do. And why did you stay there to continue and finish your education? Is it that you had that support there as well, or what was it?
Well, yeah, Kevin's shaking his head. Yeah, I did not have, well, I had phenomenal professors. So I want to shout out to all of my phenomenal professors because I did have some support, and that is what made tolerating staying there realistic. But in terms of why I stayed in general, I actually requested to leave.
Oh,
um, yeah, I requested to leave. I didn't want to cause a fuss. The first things I requested after surviving and going through the Title IX and everything, and then approaching Kevin, was I just asked for mental health support and to go to school elsewhere. So I didn't really have a chance to continue my education until, I went overseas to Oxford.
We asked the university to pay. See, she had 14 scholarships. She was a brilliant high school student and a brilliant athlete too. So I asked the university for a resolution. Let's try to resolve this without litigation. Pay for the remainder of her tuition to the school of choice that she wants to choose. I asked them to pay for her mental health therapy, an outside therapist. They said no. And that came back to haunt them. At the final pretrial, right before trial, the federal judge, he was very, very upset about how Sienna was treated, extremely upset.
yeah. I think anyone that's going to hear this and know the story would be. But I also want to ask Kevin. Kevin, what was it about Sienna Marisa's case that convinced you to really take on this fight, and that it was worth taking on the fight? Because this truly sounds like it was a fight.
Yes, it's in the book. I am the one in four. I started out. There was a woman that interviewed Sienna, a very prominent woman in journalism throughout the United States. She was one of the first women to break the glass ceiling and became an editor of a major newspaper. And when she wanted to retire, she became president of the Scripps Howard Foundation. After interviewing Sienna and being so impressed with her courage and her resilience, she told me that you need to meet her and meet her family, and you need to help her. I told her I never had a Title IX case before, and I don't go into areas of the pool that I'm not familiar with. But what struck me was when I found out in that meeting with her parents and Sienna that she went to a Title IX hearing at the mini trial on campus with 3 people hearing the facts. They found in her favor 3-0 that she had been brutally sexually assaulted, and they recommended to the dean as a punishment that he be placed on probation and that he write a paper about what he learned from the entire experience. My head exploded when I heard that, and I couldn't believe how anybody could be that callous, that ignorant, that cold-hearted. And when I heard that, and also When I met her, all I saw were the face of my own daughters, and that's the truth. And I put it in the book. I love this woman. She's a hero. She's so courageous, and I just felt I had to help her.
I know this may sound redundant to ask you this because you kind of already answered this, but this goes to both of you though. I'm wondering, what is it about the legal journey and going through the justice system and Title IX that opened your eyes to what Title IX is, and perhaps the lack of or the accountability on colleges and on campus.
You are so spot on. You are so spot on. One of the reasons why we wrote this book was not so much to attack, or to pile on to the university that we sued and won. We want to educate administrators, college administrators must know just how devastating the results are of sexual assault, alcoholism, drug addiction, um, suicide, a lifelong abusive relationships. They need to realize that they have to do better in terms of getting sexual assault victims help. They need to believe them. The second thing about this book is we want to teach parents what to ask and who to ask when they go on college visits, because they're going to get a great show when they go on. But I want them to meet the campus police. Ask the police department, are you respected by the administration? Do they take your suggestions about safety to heart, and do they do them? And is this a safe place to send my junior or senior in high school when they go to college? So we want to educate with this book in terms of um, minimizing the damage, which is right in the statute. Once sexual assault occurs on campus, the college has a duty to minimize its impact. That didn't happen here. In fact, just the opposite happened. And that's one of the reasons why we wrote the book.
Well, yeah, I mean, there you've got daughters, and we know that there are thousands of families that every year send their kids off, men, women, boys, girls, off to school, and we want them to be safe, and we expect them to be safe there. And like you said, Kevin, parents and students should have this conversation with perhaps maybe the administrators, campus safety officers, and things like that. And I also think that parents should have a conversation with their child, with their daughters that they're sending off to school.
Mhm.
Is there a conversation, do you think, Sienna and Marissa, that parents should be talking to their students or their child before they send off? What type of questions should parents maybe um, ask their daughters? Uh, I stumble on this because it's so hard to believe that this happens and has happened and still continues to happen.
Yeah, I would say that part of broaching that conversation is knowing that it might feel a little icky. It might be like,
Mhm.
I might feel a little uncomfortable. I didn't practice this. I don't, have the right words. But the thing is, there are no right words. Making sure that your child feels comfortable, not just on campus, and that they have all their blankets and everything, and that they have friends, and that they know where the food is. Do they feel comfortable seeking that help? Do
Mhm.
they feel comfortable that if something happens, they can go to their RA, that they could go to the campus or the local police or the violence prevention center on campus? Do they even know that those resources exist? Um, do they feel comfortable using like a drive share system, and other things on campus that can help them stay safe and still have a social life? I feel like also a lot of times conversations might only surround drugs and alcohol. And a lot of times these situations happen when drugs and alcohol are not involved. It might just be walking from the library or, to your dorm or anything like that, just walking around town. Making sure that you have these conversations and perhaps that they're just as dynamic as the situations that students might face on campus would be really, really helpful. There's no wrong questions.
This is go ahead, Kevin.
I want to share a personal story with you.
Yes.
During the middle of this case, when I was educated by the expert witness I hired, one of the foremost experts in the country about sexual assaults on campus, I asked my oldest daughter, and I want parents to hear this. I asked my oldest daughter, Elizabeth, have you ever been sexually assaulted? And she said no. She asked me why. I told her about this lawsuit. And then I asked my youngest, Kathleen, and Kathleen said, why do you want to know? And I said, oh, boy. Kathleen, I'm in the middle of this case. I know you've read about it or heard about it on the news. And she said, is that the only reason why you want to know, Dad? And I said, yes. She goes, well, the answer is yes. I said, oh my gosh, when? She said, when I worked at the pizza place. I went into the freezer. I went to get product, and an assistant manager put me up against the wall, and he tried to assault me. And I screamed, I punched him, and I ran out. And fortunately, a detective off duty was eating with his family, and he was arrested. And I asked, did you tell Mom? And she said, yes, I told Mom. Why didn't I know? And she said, Mom knew that if you knew that you might do something stupid. And so there you go. I had no idea that my youngest was assaulted. Now, of course, nothing like what Sienna went through, but still, it's a crisis. It's a crisis on American and Canadian campuses. It's 1 in 3 in the United Kingdom. And as hard as this is, we want to talk about it. Sienna and I want to talk about it, because if we raise this issue, if we can diminish this even a little bit, we will have been tremendously successful with the book I Am 1 in 4.
I'm glad you brought that up about the unfortunate situation that your youngest daughter went through at a pizza place, because this is not, at least for me, this is broader and larger than just a campus. It goes anywhere. So thanks for bringing that up. But I also want to ask either of you, is this something where it's time is of the essence? Don't hold it and be embarrassed about it. If something happens, at least say to a friend, a colleague immediately, and then, as well as reporting it. And I throw in the colleague and friend because I do understand a lot of people are embarrassed and they don't want to notify authorities because they go, I don't want to make a big deal of it. I don't want to get this blown up. I don't want to be more involved. But it's important to, right?
Yes. I would say communication in any sense in the beginning is extremely difficult. So knowing that it's going to be extremely difficult, and most likely the one thing that you probably don't want to say to anybody, whether it be a phone call or face to face. But I would say that yes, and Kevin can jump in at any time, that time is of the essence. And even if you're not quite sure what to do and you don't want to call the police, and you just want support, you could go to, again, a women's supported women's organization. You can go to another, like the Violence Prevention Center on campus, where they have advocates and stuff that can just talk to you. They don't have to force you to go in a certain direction or anything. So I feel like it's communication, and also knowing that you have choices and you have people who care and can help guide you and support you during that time.
Legally, it's important to report it right away, so that you have options. You can go the criminal route with the regular police department, or you can go the Title IX route and go through that process with the university. But the key thing here is my expert witness taught me, and in my reading, of course, there is no good time to be sexually assaulted, obviously, but the age bracket of the women who are most devastated physically and mentally by sexual assault are teens, which means that it is urgent that they get psychological therapy as quickly as possible. And so there is no shame in this. It is not your fault. And and if it happens, to get help is imperative and is the smart thing to do. And you will find that help is readily available to you. And like in our situation, when the university wouldn't help, we found a therapist that did help Sienna. And so that's the key. The key is come forward quickly.
Okay. Again, I'm not a counselor, psychiatrist, lawyer, none of that. And I have not experienced this, but I would imagine too. And I sort of alluded to the fact that, mention it, say, to a colleague or friend, but that's not the solution because, like you said, I think that you need to have professional. Because if you tell a friend, the friends can say, that's okay, you're all right, but they may not be saying the right thing, or they may be saying the wrong things that may affect you negatively. So I'm going to say, if this has happened, please seek out professional,
Yes.
help. So,
Yes, definitely.
Wise advice.
and
Yes.
to either one of you, Sienna, Marisa, and Kevin, how can students, create a safer culture on campus for themselves? What's the best thing that they can do?
I would say active intervention bystander training. A lot of sororities and fraternities are actually mandated to go through this. And to put it in simpler terms, it's looking out for your friends. It's building that confidence and being aware and like kind of more familiar with social scenarios that might happen where you can practice stepping up, saying something, looking out for your friends, making sure that there's a designated driver, making sure you're using the buddy system, stepping in when something doesn't look right, really practicing because that, again, communication and also community support, when you not only know what to do, but you feel confident doing it and you want to support your friends, that really can help lower violence on campus in general. When all of you, like when everyone on the campus does not tolerate violence and everyone works toward that, you see the results.
Kevin, this might sound like a strange question to ask, but many companies these days, they go through sexual assault prevention. Do you know, do administrators and people on campus, do they go through any type of annual course or anything like that they have to listen, watch, and take little quizzes on?
In 2012, the Obama administration, which took sexual assault extremely seriously, and actually they wrote a letter called the Dear Colleague Letter. And that letter to all universities and colleges said, you're not paying attention to the law. You've got to take this issue more seriously. And to his credit, he compelled universities to get smarter, to understand what's going on, and stop looking away on this. Because, like you said at the outset of the show, it is a tough subject. What we found in depositions was that their training was extremely sparse. 1 week training and just reading magazines, basically, and reading updates. That's not enough. It needs to be an annual situation. One of the things that I wrote in one of my chapters is I ask administrators to bring psychologists and psychiatrists to these administrators to teach them how serious this problem is on campus and what this does to destroy women's lives. Empower the people that run the violence centers to get involved more with the fraternities and sororities and the students on campus. They can do more.
I forgot, and I don't want people to forget. The title of your book is called I Am the One in Four. Can you let the viewers, the listeners know where can they go to find out more information about the book?
Our contract is done with the publisher. I have that ready. And right now we have a website, right, Sienna? I am the one in four.com with the numbers 1 and 4.
Yep. That's www.iamtheoneinfour.com where you can find out all about us. Yeah.
And,
Awesome.
And keep this, I think, in the forefront of your minds, that even if you don't have a child that's going off to college, chances are likely that you have friends who have kids that are going off. Bring it to their attention and say, hey, have you thought about this, or have you guys asked these questions? Because it is important, very important. And I I don't want to diminish anything on the women's side, but I also think that include the guys, because you don't know. And I also want to add this is it could be between, I'll just say, an administrator and a student, or peer to peer, student to student thing. This can happen anytime. And it doesn't just necessarily have to be, I went out on a date. And like you said, Sienna, Marisa, it's not like a date or a blind date. It could be that you're walking to the library,
Right.
total stranger, things like that. So,
Well, let me speak to parents of boys, if you don't mind,
yeah,
real
please.
quickly. Um, a criminal defense firm in Cincinnati called me up and said, Kevin, I've got a situation for you under Title IX, and it's a guy. I said, don't do guys. I represent women. And he said, no, he's innocent. He was found innocent by a jury, but he was thrown off campus without due process and lost 2 years of his education. Now, let me state, statistics show 95% of women who accuse someone of sexual assault are telling the truth. But 5 to 7%, they say, are false. Well, this young man not only lost 2 years of college, but his parents had to second mortgage their home and pay over $250,000 to prove that he was not guilty. Both detectives got on the witness stand in the criminal case and and said that they believed that he was innocent. But the fact is, he had to sit outside in the hallway and wait for a jury to determine whether he was going to spend 30 years behind bars. So, parents of boys, talk to your sons, make them understand how devastating the effects are of sexual assault, but also to not put themselves in vulnerable positions either.
Please don't take me lightly, or what I'm going to ask as a negative thing. But like you're saying, Kevin, uh, boys need to understand boundaries.
Yes.
People need to understand boundaries, but it's also difficult to know what is the boundary. Uh, Sometimes I think that people are, again, this even goes to the point where they're afraid to report things because they might be thinking they're stepping out of their boundary. They don't want to call more attention. But there are boundaries, and parents need to let their children, doesn't matter if you're 20 years old, if you're still in the house and you're going off or whatever it might be to college, you're still their parent and you're still, a child. And we all need to learn what boundaries are. And if you don't know what the personal boundary is with the other person, ask. Don't assume, ask them.
Well, no means no. We all know that. But
Hmm.
there was a recent case, several recent cases, where both the boy, the male and the female on a college campus were both under the influence of alcohol. And there is no consent when the woman is under the influence of alcohol. And that's, the boy said she gave permission, but they were both under the influence, and that is not consent. And parents of boys, you've got to pound that into to the young men on campus that these are the things that they have to know.
Yes. And I again, I'm going to mix other things into this. We hear about impaired judgment when you're on drugs and alcohol. Well, this is the same situation. If you already know and you've heard it 1,000 times, don't drink and drive, don't drink and drive. This is kind of the same situation. It, like you said, Kevin, no means no. But if you are at a party and you're both impaired, just know that it's all a no. It's a no go.
Well, Sienna brought up a big point. And please jump in, Sienna, but your point was right on. You're at a fraternity party and you see your fraternity brother walking up the stairs with a woman that you know is under the influence of alcohol. getting him not to go up the stairs may save him 25 years. That's the type of friend that you need to be. And you may get pushback. You may get out of my way, but it's the same thing about grabbing people's keys, like you said, in a bar. Hey, Ralph, you can't drive. I'll drive you home. We'll get the car tomorrow. It's the same thing. The buddy system. You've got to look out, not only for your friend walking up the stairs, but for her too.
Yeah. Yeah.
When we hear the word intervention, that's kind of a scary word. I don't want to intervene. And like you said, Kevin, on this situation where if you happen to see somebody at a party, male and female walking up the stairs to go someplace, don't, I would say, don't think about as you're intervening anything. You're preventing. You're preventing a lifelong mistake. One way or one thing or another. You're just preventing something. You're not intervening them from doing anything.
Yeah, it might sound like you're right, like a big word of like, oh, I'm doing something that is really official and I'm, impacting my friend in like a negative way. I don't want to mess up their night. But really, I mean, to be honest, dating apps exist. Like that moment doesn't have to happen right then. So you can still be like, hey man, I'm your wingman. I'm here for you. Let's make a better decision tomorrow. Like that's great. They're cute. Get their number. Let's go. You're right. It doesn't have to necessarily be framed in a negative way. It's really looking out for each other and making sure that, that your time at university is what you make it rather than it being shaped by kind of negative situations and, turning it into where you don't feel like you have friends or you can't really go outside or engage in like student activities. The more that you look out for each other, the more that y'all can just, be students, have a safe space. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll go to Kevin for this for the reference because there are times years back, we'll say you're going to a party to score. You're not going to score. Think of it. I'm going to meet someone just to meet someone, but that's it. Is flip that mentality, that change. You're not going there to. Well, hopefully that people understand this. That if you're going to a party, you're going with your friends or whatever, you're going to meet. You're just having a good time, fun. A good time does not mean that um, you have to have an end result of whatever it is. Um, that may sound silly, or if people don't understand what I'm saying, is don't go there with an intent to take advantage of someone or to put yourself at a disadvantage. And that disadvantage means know your limit if you're going to drink.
Well, that's correct. And what parents need to talk to the kids before they get there.
Yeah.
It's so important because so many they're free for the first time. They don't have mom and dad telling them that they have to be home by midnight. But the warnings need to come really early because of the devastation that could take place with one wrong move. And the idea that you want to get somebody drunk, that's a ticket to misery, including your misery. When the allegation comes and if you're in Title IX, you're going to get thrown out of school. If you're charged criminally, you're going to go to jail. And your life's going to be over because try to get a job after you have a felony and be registered as a sexual deviant for the rest of your life. You got to go on the registry. So wherever you move, everybody on the block has to know that you're there if you ever do get out of jail.
Yeah.
So these are the types of conversations that, while difficult, have to happen before you go to college. And then once you go to college, as Sienna said, you have to have a buddy system at every party that you go to, and make an agreement with that person. If I do something stupid, you're going to intervene, right? And vice versa. And that's a great way to prevent things like this.
And I think also having conversations of it not just surrounding like party situations. Like, for example, I was helping an acquaintance with a poem. And that's when everything went wrong. So I feel like also broadening that conversation and not just assuming that it might be someone that you don't know or someone that you do know, or that drugs and alcohol have to be involved. I think it's just a dynamic understanding of what is right and what is wrong and what is safe and what is unsafe.
Yeah. Probably another word to throw in there is accountability, right? If you're,
Yes.
um, so, uh, this is such an important topic, to have a discussion with. I, I hope and I pray that this episode really opens the eyes and ears to people about this topic. And again, I want to throw this out there. We're having a conversation about, on college campuses and things like that, but it can happen anywhere. So I'd like to ask both of you, you know, what is it that you want people to take away from this conversation today that we're having? And especially about thriving after surviving. So, what do you want people to take away from the conversation?
Yes. Personally, for me, I would love survivors to feel seen, survivors of any form of violence, but particularly sexual violence, to feel seen, because that it's not one size fits all, and you can't just look at somebody and know that they've survived something. So it's to support fellow survivors, but also, yeah, to spread awareness and what to get out of this. And is it's not just my story. You can thrive after surviving. And it's pretty much figuring out what that means to you, how you can find that inner peace and allow happiness to ebb and flow throughout your life. For me, I had to physically distance myself from everything that happened. And that was the first time. That was the first time I got a glimpse of how I could actually thrive and how I could find my peace. So I think what I would like people to get out of this is to not be afraid to get support, to know that they are seen. And however you thrive, whatever makes you truly driven to, don't be too scared to tap into that again. You really can thrive after surviving.
Sienna Marisa is a PhD candidate right now and will soon have her PhD. He received her master's from the University of Oxford in England. It is an amazing story, but I got to watch her suffer. And in the book, parents, students, and administrators, you will read about her suffering and you will understand that, but for the people that she placed around her, including her loving husband, Dylan, um, she may not have made it. And we go into details about, afterwards, especially Sienna in her chapters, about how hard it was for her to keep getting up every day and to go to class, knowing that they kept him on campus and they didn't do anything to him. The mental struggles that she had, but she decided she flipped a switch. But your daughter may not have that strength. Your daughter may not have that resolve. So the key is to prevent it. That's why we wrote this book. We wrote this book so that your daughter does not get sexually assaulted. Uh, but like Sienna said, if she does, to know how to get healthy, how to get better, how to survive, how not to feel the shame. It is so important to believe people who say they were sexually assaulted, because, like I said, 95% truth rate. The research is all over the literature, so believe them and help them. But we wrote the book in the hopes that we can save people from this fate.
Once again, folks, the book is called I Am the One in Four. Sienna Marisa Brown, Kevin L. Murphy, Esquire. I've got to say, thank you very much for this conversation today. A very important conversation.
Thank you for having us. We really appreciate you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.